Can't hear it. Can you pump it up?
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the new and improved The Space Inbetween podcast. We decided to make a little change to the podcast, kind of rebrand ourselves and, something a little different. So, hey, how are you? This is a safe space for diverse voices. So, welcome everyone to the rebranded The Space Inbetween podcast. This is KG, and I have Shani here over with us, and our special guest today, Miss Linda.
Hey. Not our guest, she's fam.
Special guest fam. Yeah, all the
tomato.
Tomatoes, tomato. Exactly. So what's going on, everybody? How are y'all?
Doing good. Doing great, actually.
Linda, how was your week?
It was not productive whatsoever. I've been trying to clean my room for the past 2 weeks. It's only gone messier. And we're about to go out of town tomorrow. Still
Where you going? Oh, don't tell me that.
Yeah, that's because we're going.
Don't do that.
So that's the week. I've been wanting to I've created a to-do list every day and nothing gets checked off.
Oh.
So
are they just on a paper? Or are they in a pretty notebook? Or
it's in the notebook you gave me.
Don't you love that notebook?
I love it.
Yeah.
So good.
Very
the paper is so good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was talking about how good the paper was today, and I was like, it's custom. But
I was like, hey, this paper is so good.
Kirkland paper is the best.
It is.
It's really smooth.
Yeah.
So how are you, Shani? How are you? What's up?
Like Linda, my room has not been clean. I should say our room, mainly because of our wonderful daughters that live.
It's mostly your room. I just happen to be in there.
They bring their life into our space. So
yes.
So I, yesterday, because I was like, I'm gonna do something really nice for Kyrie. I was like, I did.
I know you did. I know. I know how this.
I'm gonna clean. I swept the floor. I made the bed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But by the time he came upstairs, when his workday was over, it looked like none of that happened. And I just don't. I think that part of the problem. I don't know why. So I think that I need a room makeover.
Mm.
And I think that for Christmas, I think that I need to look at more functional furniture for the space.
So I have a lot on my honeydew list.
Exactly. So, so other than that, it's been, I would also say unproductive in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the things on my to-do list didn't get done because of two things. One, what's happening in the nation, just joining grief with George Floyd and all the protests that are happening. And so just kind of being a part of that, paying attention and participating, and by, watching stuff, reading stuff, having conversations, joining in prayer calls. And then the other part that's kind of been really distracting is that our refrigerator and dishwasher, we have two appliances. They can't get installed. We have been eating out of this tiny mini refrigerator. So I have literally spent days where I call our home insurance company and you call and you wait. I'm not joking. For between an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours before you get to the first human being.
That's crazy.
That's your rate. So all day I call them.
She's not lying. She's not exaggerating. Because I did the first
traveling with me with the music background.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we will get this resolved next week. But that's taken it's thrown everything off. So how about you, dear?
Everything is everything, quite frankly. I mean, honestly, going through the same things you're going through. But obviously with work, there's a lot of stuff that's happening at my job, and it's nuts. So my next several months are going to be kind of crazy. But I'm not complaining. I have work to do. I feel very fortunate that I'm able to, go to work every single day, still get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and be able to take care of the family and do other things and dream other dreams. So I feel fortunate. I feel fortunate to be alive. Rest in peace to George Floyd and to me, Breonna Taylor. All these folks that, they're out there, as Shawnee said, protesting about. I think it's important message to keep ourselves reminded of that even in a land that talks about, freedom, liberty, and justice, there's still quite a bit of injustice. And on top of that, just lamenting for that, just lamenting with the nation over that. But remember, and I keep trying to say this is why Colin Kaepernick kneeled. This is not for the flag, had nothing to do with the military. It's because of these types of injustices that we see. And so it's he was never wrong on the wrong side of things, but this further vindicates his message, further vindicates his stance, and he may not be the best messenger, but he was right on the message, with this. So there it is.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. One of the plumbers, we had 2 plumbers come by today. And the first plumber, he was really sweet. He finished talking, and then he was like, "So, how are you doing?" And I think that, and it just showed me that I think people are needing. And if you all hear background like running around, it's that my cats are deciding to have their racetrack time during this taping. But it's like people have to talk about it, it's something that's on folks' minds.
Right.
And normally, like when people come over, you're not talking about things like that, when they're making a service call. But he actually went to the protest that was in DC on Sunday. Wow. So the first night when it was really kind of got out of hand. He was just talking about like how he felt like he needed to be there and he needed to join in. And so that was pretty cool. Because I think it's just like not just this thing that's happening somewhere out in the world that doesn't impact us, but it is, and it's touching our lives. So so, and then tomorrow you're off on a road trip, so that means you really have to, after this podcast, get your room,
get to it, like actually clean. I have to pack. We leave at 5 a.m.
Just put on some music and
just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. Just do it.
It'll be all worth it in the end.
It'll be all worth it, especially when you get back.
Yeah.
Because I hate coming back to Mass. I can't stand coming back to Mass. That really is the problem. Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to do something new. Very excited. We're gonna play a game. We're gonna be playing a game during our podcast. This is our first game segment, and our game is called
Fake News or Not.
Fake news, real news.
Fake news or not.
That's how it works. Very, very.
No.
You're playing, Linda. We
know.
So exciting. So Niera is going to read you a news story.
Our middle child.
Yes, our middle child. And you are going to listen to this news story, and then without looking at, you cannot use your phone.
Hands up.
Free.
Don't look. Hands up. Don't look.
You have to decide.
Too soon.
Fake news, or is it real news?
Real news.
Yes. Okay.
I want to win. Okay.
Hi, this is Niera, and are you ready to play Fake News or Real News? Today's article is Teen has £3 hairball removed from her stomach.
Today's article
A teen from India who secretly ate her own hair ended up having a giant hairball removed from her stomach, according to news reports. The 14-year-old went to the doctor with abdominal pain and vomiting. Surprisingly, doctors found a £3 hairball wedged in her stomach. The girl was diagnosed with Rapunzel syndrome, an extremely rare condition in which a hairball forms in the stomach. Most cases of Rapunzel syndrome are diagnosed in children and young adults ages 13 to 20. What do you think? Fake news or real news?
Adults ages 13 to 20. What do you think?
What do you think?
Fake news, Linda? But it's disgusting, is what I think. So that's a thing. Due to the detail, I think it's real news.
Real news. You're actually right.
Yes. I can't tell. Where's the suspense? You gotta build a suspense to make her think she got it wrong.
Yes.
To do a better job with that. You're actually right. Yes.
That is so.
And your prize is a no prize. You get nothing.
Yay. Bragging points, I guess.
Yes, bragging points. It is like I loved your thinking skills. You were like, there are lots of details here. It's so funny when Niera wrote it. She did a great job, by the way. Thank you, Niera.
Yeah,
yes,
she was like, Mom, this is not real, okay? I know. So I was like, no, babe. She was like, Mommy, you wrote this, okay? Of course you would call it Rapunzel, right? And so, but
that's where I thought it would get you.
Yeah.
The lay term of this is Rapunzel syndrome, but the medical term of this is trichophagia, and they treat it in two ways. They treat it by surgery and psychiatric care because it's mental, that just has people eating. And what happens is like people become addicted to eating their hair.
I wouldn't eat my hair.
Are we about?
I would like. There's another thing where you like pluck your hair when you're nervous, and I like pluck my hair.
Yes.
And my eyebrow hair and my like eyelash hair. And I wouldn't eat it, but I like throw it out. But I feel like the next step to that would be like consuming it.
It would be.
Like I won't get to that point.
We are so thankful. It would be. It would be, but yeah, it's this thing where you're constantly, plucking or playing with your hair. Yeah.
I relate to that.
Hmm?
Wow. I said I relate to that.
Yeah. And so sometimes it happens as like a nervous condition. Sometimes it happens as like people just start doing it like, oh, this is how I think, like chewing on pencils or, doing something like that, especially with people that have long hair that's constantly, that can, like, I can chew on the ends of my hair and then the chewing on the hair. And then another thing that happens with this is that the hair makes them full. So they start to lose because they're literally
they're
digesting hair. So the hair makes them full, but because it's hard for hair to pass through the digestive system because it wasn't meant to pass through the digestive system. It creates this sense of fullness in them. So they lose their appetite, and that kind of, it triggers all sorts of things. So they're not getting nutrients. It's kind of all these things. So
that's an awful condition.
It's an awful condition. It's a Rapunzel. And I don't, I kind of have a problem with the name too. Like, because like Rapunzel could be like, I didn't do that. Like, why is the name after me? You know what I'm saying? I know because she had long hair.
I had nothing to do with getting stuck up in this tower.
Yeah.
So this news actually comes from Live Science, which is a science magazine that talks about science issues that are your like rare conditions. So it is not a common condition, which is great. It is rare. And they just basically have to have surgery and then lots of counseling and care to help them come up with different ways to cope with.
Yeah. And like find comfort and stuff.
And find comfort and handle themselves in that way. So
wow.
I know you're going to be looking now. Like
3 pounds, though.
3 pounds.
That's
go look at the videos. Go look at the videos and the pictures.
Don't look at the pictures.
I don't know
like, don't show me the picture. Then he was
hey,
like,
she showed me that crazy tongue. She's going to go watch these videos.
Oh, yeah. The butterfly tongue trick.
Yeah. So anyways, that is good. You are the first.
I'm so happy I won.
Game. You are awesome.
And no prizes in the mail.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I love that deductive thinking. Thinking that you.
I'm very competitive, so
you are very competitive. Yeah. You are very competitive. Okay, so we're gonna transition. We're gonna move into what we're here to talk about tonight, which is social media. And what is so amazing,
and specifically about toxicity within.
Yeah, like when we first thought of this show, this was actually before George Floyd was brutally murdered. And so I was thinking about that today as I was sitting down and trying to like think about things and think about the show. And it also kind of like changed some of the questions and stuff, or kind of where I think it would be good places for us to go in this conversation. But I wanted to start with us kind of defining what social media is and what it's not. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, like, I looked it up. So I'm going to read to you the Oxford Dictionary, which you know is my favorite dictionary. The Oxford Dictionary's definition of social media. Social media is a computer-based technology that facilitates the sharing of ideas, thoughts, and information through the building of virtual communities and networks. So it's the sharing of ideas, the sharing of thoughts, the sharing of information. And I think, for me, the word that was not there is facts, right? It's not fact-based. It doesn't have to be fact-based. Right. It's idea-based.
Well, so part of that is the fact that there isn't a real regulation around it yet, right? And I think that's something that obviously in the wake of Trump's tweet getting banned, from or being flagged by Twitter, they're thinking about getting regulations, which actually the tech companies really want. They actually, Facebook, Twitter, all of them, they actually do kind of want that, because then they want to be able to sit at the table. They want to be able to lobby to say what this is. Therefore, they don't have to get attacked on various different fronts based upon one person's opinion versus another person's opinion, because, they get attacked whether they think they're too liberal, they get attacked where they think they're too conservative. So if they have some type of requirements that they can all agree to, then it's kind of like, whatever, we don't care. We're within the requirements, so you can't do anything. So it actually shields them in a way to have some type of regulation. But obviously they don't want just the government making that decision. They want to have to be at the table. They want to be able to lobby for that.
Right. So I kind of wanted to kind of think about, like, what do you all think about just social media? As I know that we all have our experiences with social media, but just the concept in itself, like a web-based platform for people to build virtual communities for the purpose of sharing ideas, basically. I mean, what do you think about just that as a concept?
I mean, personally, I enjoy social media, I think, in that aspect. Like, coming from someone who's like homeschooled and like whose circle is quite small,
right?
It is nice to kind of find people who have the same interest and like niches as you, and that you can like discuss that. And I found like, I mean, I definitely think social media has evolved for sure. And like, I mostly use Instagram. I don't know too much about Twitter and Facebook and like all the other social medias, but I know for like Instagram, sometimes you'll see a post and then within the post you'll find, hey, join this group chat and we can just like talk about this if you'd like.
Okay.
And like, yes, be careful and like precautious and all that type of stuff, but it's also like most of the time it's people your age or people at least with the same interest as you, and you're kind of just talking about this one thing and you can leave it, blah blah. So I think it's a nice way to kind of like find community and also express ideas. I think the danger is you can get so lost in only finding people who think like you and agree with you, where your world, as it's getting bigger, it's also becoming smaller. And so I think like if I just agree or like have one point, now I'm not going to interact with people in my real life that have different point of views, but I'm just going to find a group of people that do, and I'm going to interact with them and connect with them and drowning out everything else. So you kind of are creating your own world with the entire world. And I think that's what's really toxic about social media within like the expression and like the sharing of ideas and stuff like that. But
you're kind of able to, what you're saying is like in social media is create your own utopia. Your own thought utopia.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
Your thought utopia.
And I think, and I think I think the beautiful thing about social media is that there's so many different avenues and platforms that you can go into to do that expression, right? So you have your Facebook, which obviously is gold standard, whatever, just basically the monster.
Or as the young people say,
right?
or the older people.
Hey, listen, make no mistake. Don't believe that. Don't believe that. There are plenty of young people on Facebook. It's not 100. It ain't. It's not 2 billion people or 1 billion people of old people or 1 billion users of old people. That's for sure. But and then you have your Twitter sphere, which I've never found a use for. I was on it for years, and I finally got to the point I was like, what am I on here for? And I just deleted it. And then, you have your Instagram, now owned by Facebook, where it's more of a visual thing. Then, you have your LinkedIn for your business side, or Douchedang for your business side. So there's a whole bunch of different avenues to allow you to connect in different ways for different reasons, as, Linda was saying, in terms of specific social spheres. And that has specific thoughts about specific things, where there is career, where there is ideological, where there is activism, where there is political, etc. So
right. And I think I kind of wanted to start off like talking about the positives of social media, especially. I think that for some groups or some circles, social media has such a negative, like all you hear are all of the bad things, or especially as like a parent, everything you need to keep your child away from. I know that, our Leela is 13, and then we have a 10-year-old and we have an 8-year-old. And so the question always, you're kind of always like, okay, well, when is the right age to do what? And we have friends, or we know people in our lives who are on the side of like, my child will not have a phone until they, go off to college, or they're very like no access or extreme monitoring. And then we also have other examples where it's like no monitoring at all, and you have access to everything. And so, it's just kind of like finding that between space, knowing that, there's good, but there are these dangerous things. And not just in the ways of like I think that the normal or the obvious dangers of like pornography, that's like, I think, an obvious thing. But I think even the more subtle dangers that people may not think about, which can be just as damaging in certain ways, which is what you bring up, Linda, about just this creating this world where you're group thinking, and, and not even being aware of it. Like not even being,
because it's all algorithm too. So like, and the only thing you're seeing on for like Instagram, it's explore page, and it's only towards your interest.
Yeah, and that algorithm thing is really problematic, because I mean, it's not really organic. It's based upon some really prescribed idea of what they think you should see versus something that you actually really want to see.
Right.
I mean, I hated the whole, especially on Facebook, where they did like the most recent, because it's garbage. It's not really the most recent. It's just what, based upon wherever their algorithm is, what they see is the most relevant, thing for me to see. And so, but to that point, I mean, it really feeds in many ways off of tribalism. So the algorithm almost in a way kind of feeds that tribalistic instinct. So if for whatever reason I say, for one time I say, I want to look up something in terms of DIY, do it yourself, whatever, I'm going to get flooded. Doesn't matter if I really don't care about DIY. Like, I don't even know how to use a hammer or anything like that. It doesn't matter. I'm all of a sudden going to get flooded with that, because now it's trying to feed off this tribal instinct. Says, oh, well, you like this thing, so let's bombard you.
Right.
This, and over bombard.
And you don't even have to tape it. So after Game of Thrones ended, or during Game of Thrones, I would always, like, in my news feed, because I guess it figured out like, oh, you are a Game of Thrones person. So in my news feed, the top of the news feed every day for me was an article about Game of Thrones, right?
Wow.
So when Game of Thrones ended, which I was thankful for that. And but when it ended, and I just needed to go through like mourning, like I just needed to go through like, it's over, right? I don't need to, like, it's finished. It's come to an end. And so I needed to distance myself from all that. It's finished. So I would get so frustrated when every day I'm getting Game of Thrones, like all these Game of Thrones stuff. And so I said to the phone, I did not type this. I said, Cover was there. I said, I am over Game of Thrones right now. Please stop sending me articles about Game of Thrones. And do you know, the next morning and since then, 0. I'm not even making this up. This is not fake news, guys. This is real.
I've had those same experiences where it's like Jordan and I will be talking. Jordan's my sister, my older sister, and I'll say something like, "Oh," or she'll say like, "I really want jeans from Gap," and then lo and behold, an ad on Instagram, Gap jeans, like very specific.
That's scary, and they're listening all the time.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's already been proven that your phone, like Siri, for instance, Siri is actually listening to you. They've actually already had, reports that it is truly listening to you, and they're listening to people in very compromised situations, all the time. We have an Alexa, right? We have several Alexa. I know they've heard quite a few conversations in this house because I see that little green thing going on. They said, "Oh, it's just updating the system." No, you're recording.
You're listening.
You're listening to me, right? And
like Black Mirror.
And Bixby on the Samsung computers. I mean, these things are listening to us. They are very much taking in what we're saying, etc. I mean, if I go on my webpage and I type in, I want a camel hair coat. All of a sudden, I go to the media, social media, I'm gonna see ads for camel hair coats.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And the first time I saw that, it freaked me out. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Then you get used to it. And that's
now I don't care.
Right. You get used to it.
You're right.
And not only do you get used to it, you find that it helps your life.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get to a point where it's like, for me, I'm like, I can't even, I'm like, it's awful. Like, Alexa, what time is it? Alexa, what's the weather like? Alexa, like you get so dependent, or, it is helpful to, I actually have found pretty good, like, pieces of clothing or, books or things that I may not have found before because it brought it to my attention, right? It just, so on those ways, it's like, hey, that's good. But I think it's like, when is it, it's that.
I think at this point, we're getting to the point where it is Big Brother's watching,
Yeah.
And now it's not necessarily the government, it's the tech companies, because they make money. Like, the fact that Facebook doesn't charge is not in itself is not there's a reason for it. It's because they make their money off of ads. But how do they know what ads and how to make the money off the ads? They know that by the data that they mine off the information we give them, right? So pictures, videos, anything we upload into Facebook actually technically belongs to Facebook. So even though we can delete it and take it down, and certain states have made certain laws that kind of go, get around that, in general, that's the kind of the world we signed up. We signed up to give away the one thing that we actually do own, and we should own, I think, especially in this age, is data, and ourselves, and all the data we put into these systems.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit. I want to talk about, what's interesting in this conversation with the three of us is that we have two very distinct, different relationships with social media. So Kyrie and I remember, you don't even know, like, some of the stuff, Linda, like call waiting, or the phone in the house that had the coil thing.
I heard about it.
And we
TV channels actually going off at night. IL TV, UHF.
We had an extra long one. Okay, an extra long one. Like, so in Mima's house, our phone cord, before we got the cordless, that was a big thing too. But it could reach from the kitchen. My dad got like an extra long one all the way back down the hallway.
30-footer.
So, it was common to walk around the house and you're like going under the cord line.
Yep, 30-foot cord.
And, also we had to wait to, like, when the line was open, because it was something about, like, when the line was open, or so you had to wait, everyone wasn't accessible all the time. pagers came out. Do you know what a pager is?
Yeah, I've seen it in the movies where it's like, someone's paging me.
Yeah, hit me on my pager. So that was
Yeah.
a thing. I remember like when pagers came out, I didn't like them. I don't think I've ever liked
I think they're kind of cool.
The two-way stage was
You
like
had a pager?
was the
Matt?
precursor to texting. The precursor to texting was the two-way pager.
You had a pager?
Where you could send out, where you could type something in and you could send it to somebody else's two-way. You could go back and forth. So it's two-way. All right. So that was like the precursor to the texting era. And that was a very short-lived, but it was a very interesting era because it was the first time when you could actually get, it was like as close as you get outside of having a cell phone, getting almost instantaneous response from somebody. Because you type that two-way in, a few seconds later, somebody texts you back. That wasn't how it always was, especially when you had a beeper. If you had a beeper, you had to wait. You had to find out what the number is. Then you had to go find yourself a payphone. But you don't know what those are. You had to go find a payphone, and then you had to call that in and pray that they're on the other line. I mean, the whole like first season of The Wire is basically about that era and how you enter a number in the pager and you had to go to a payphone and wait for them to call you back. The whole 9 yards. It's ancient, but it's great because
That's
it tells
so complicated.
you how far we've come.
It was
in a short period of time.
complicated. I would not have the patience. I'd be like, why didn't they text me back?
You don't have it now because you live in a world where you can get everything instantaneously. That's not how it was. That's within the last 15 years. That's not how it always was.
Right. Yeah. But I in our time and the time before, we grew up in a world where like it was not as loud, where we didn't hear everybody's comments about everything real time. Mm-hmm. And even from, I think of just like a development perspective, like coming into myself, I wasn't dealing with everybody's opinions and critiques, and comments about, everything about my life, what I wore, what I liked, what I didn't like, what I ate, you know what I'm saying? And I wasn't trying to please. And there's a quote that I found, and it said that it's from the Gospel of Technology, just an interesting read. And it says, in an overwhelming attempt to capture memories, people have forgotten to make memories. And one of the differences between, obviously the tech is different, right? So there's obvious differences between my experience growing up and like people and growing up with technology. It's like, I find that sometimes people have, my kids said it, like today, it's like, like people want to capture the picture, but they're capturing the moment or creating the moment sometimes for social media versus like being in the moment, like being present in the moment. I don't know if I'm making sense. You know what I'm saying?
I totally understand that. I think like even I fall into that sometimes. I think like, okay, so there's this new idea. Again, I mainly only use Instagram, so it's coming from an Instagram user perspective. But like there's this idea of like photo shoots, and like that's a way to hang out with your friends, and it's like you go out and you have a photo shoot. And although it's fun, like I've done it before, and it is fun because like there are moments.
It's creative, right?
Yeah. And you like get to do fun poses, like, oh, I'm going to take this angle or that angle. And it's like cool to see these like different perspectives. And then you're laughing like outside of just the photo as well.
Right.
But instead of like saying, let's hang out, and then, oh, we're taking a picture at our hangout that's like just happening.
Right.
It's catered for like, for Instagram, and then through Instagram we get to hang out or like we get time together.
Right.
And so I think, and it's like becoming a really popular trend too, like you'll see on like YouTube of especially girls my age, like photo shoot with my friends, or like photo shoot ideas or poses you can do for your photo shoot, blah blah, group poses, that type of thing. And I guess it's sad because you want authentic quality time outside of that, and that's not the only way people are hanging out for sure, but I think it like goes to your point of like making a memory or like manufacturing a memory just
for the how like central or intrusive or non-intrusive does social media play when you're with your friends, like person to person? So when you're hanging out with each other, like we're together, right, in real life, like does social media play a role in that time, or is it kind of like we're not really focused on that because now we're together?
Yeah, I think for me, for everyone, there's never a big generalization that you can make, but definitely for sure it's either someone scrolling through Instagram or taking Snapchats. I've had times where I've been,
and so Snapchat is like
Snapchat is like, it's like a quick picture, maybe your face or like a picture of whatever, and then you just send it to someone, and then like it goes away. It doesn't, but they can't replay it unless they do replay it and then take a screenshot, but then if they took a screenshot, that type of thing. But I've had instances where it's like I'm hanging out, like let's say I'm hanging out with you in person, and I opened your Snap maybe like 3 hours ago, but I knew I was seeing you in person, so there's no reason for me to snap you now. And reverse, you've opened my Snap, and then you respond with a picture of yourself as well, and we're talking, and I literally see it on my phone, like that's happened, and I'm like, why are you,
oh wow,
like we're right here, there's no need for it. And so I think in those ways it's definitely like, and it's been like when you're just hanging out, but I also understand how it's like if someone's doing something funny and I want to like just film it, and then I do want to post it, like I think that happens too, and I think there's different levels of like okayness with that, so I don't know, it's a complicated territory to like,
it really is.
There's some
to figure out.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some really dark sides to all that, obviously, and I think the things that, especially on the topic tonight about the toxicity of it, it's one of those things where there becomes this thing where there's this anonymization of your presence on social media that you kind of forget. You may be anonymous in the sense that you're a hashtag or you're you have a handle on the internet, but that the internet is progressively becoming a place where you can get outed for a lot of your beliefs and for a lot of the things that you say, right? And what you've seen over the years is this progression of very, very negative, very, very racist, very, very sexist, very, very whatever talk, and even to the point, where there are like even precursor to like a Facebook or Instagram, there are message boards, or bulletin boards. And that's where you would spit that, and you could kind of control who was in and out of it because you had an admin that would let you in or out. So it's kind of like the groups, on Facebook or whatever. But I think, I think there's a couple things. One is the fact that because of that ability to isolate yourselves, to get into these little social bubbles, that even if it's an unhealthy thought, you can find a bubble of those people that share that same unhealthy thought. And so what we're seeing is the advent of a lot of these hate groups and a lot of these hate, mongering sort of ideologies and thought process politically as well as socially that have really popped up over the years. And it's one of those things where it's like I've become a little afraid of it, because not from just a physical fear, but really from an ideological sphere, because what we've seen is obviously within our country itself is this splitting, this diverging of ideology. There's no ability to meet in the middle and talk, right? Because now you can have your soundboard and get amped up by this group over here online, right? So that you don't have to even try to consider what the other person is trying to say. And so it's just like this really fracturing, society from a social angle, because nobody's really talking face to face. It's like saying something online is a whole lot different than saying it in my face. right?
Yeah.
There's a willing to be a little bit more, than get a little more leeway to give and take when you're sitting in my face than when you're behind the keyboard, spouting off all that nonsense.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think also we just don't, we're not able to practice like conversation and dialogue, reasoning. We're not able to practice certain skill sets when most of your communication is handled through social media platforms. I remember the first time one of my friends the guy broke up with them via text. Now it was like, it was just, and it was like screenshot this. And then she sent me like, here's our whole argument. Like it was a whole, like, and I'm just like, what? Like, this is crazy to me. Like, but nowadays, people, that's common.
I do that sometimes even.
You do what?
If I'm like really angry, like with like people who are really close to me and that I trust, I'm like, look at what this person said. How should I respond?
Blah, blah, blah. That happens all the time. So like the other thing too is you never know like what
I don't send any of that stuff.
Screenshot and share.
No way.
I know you believe you wouldn't, but like screenshot and shared with other people. And it's kind of like, wow. And so, so those private, like emotive, especially in like emotional, like, moments, those private thoughts or those private things that are shared, like the sense of like privacy there, it's not,
it's gone.
It's gone. It's all gone. And like navigating that world of like, there is no real privacy. You know what I mean? Because people are watching, listening, and also sharing, sharing. And the sharing though it's outside of the context of the relationship, like the full relationship. It's outside of the context of tone, which is so important. It gets like lost.
Context is lost in writing.
And and I think that sometimes, because especially in situations where you share things and it also sometimes makes it hard for relationships and I'm speaking like in this example with relationships to be repaired, because you're like, well, my friend knows that this and this was said, so it's kind of like hard to come back from that.
That's right.
I am not a fan of working out your relationship through text. Like, I just think it's not a good idea.
In person is definitely necessary.
In person is necessary.
And if you can't even do in person, something like this or like FaceTime.
Like a Zoom or a FaceTime or a call or Marco Polo or house party. It's so all many resources. Things. Yeah. It's so many things, but not to work it out in ways in which we're seeing that it actually is harmful. Or just doesn't allow, I think it harms the relationship or harms that opportunity more than it does.
So Linda, let me ask you a question. In terms of your opinion, and with these new social media outlets, do you think in essence, whether you think they're trying to do something harmful or not, but do you think they're actually doing more good or harm?
That's a great question.
In society at this point.
To go there, babe.
I think, so I actually have a story to tell that's recent and relative to what's happening in the US right now, especially with like George Floyd and the protests and everything like that. So I've been, along with signing petitions and calling and emailing and donating, all that kind of stuff, I've also been, because I can't physically go to the protest right now because my parents don't necessarily think it's safe. We're also about to leave town, so just be irresponsible. But I've been like posting and sharing resources almost every day. Right? Yeah, through Instagram. Yeah. Almost every day I could share an example. But and here's okay, so I've been doing this, and I think my followers, they come from like, it's mostly evangelical Christians who I've met at like certain camps, West Virginia, people from people from a school I'm about to go to. That come across from all parts of the world. And so there's a lot of different perspective. It's not just like people I know who have the same like values and mindsets as me. And so I've just been posting stuff that's been like educational and stuff like that. And I've gotten like some response from people that I've never met before physically, who have been like, hey, your posts have actually been really eye-opening. I live in a really small town with literally no people of color or Black people.
Oh, that's great.
And I want to be an ally and I want to help. What do you think I can do? I don't mean to like emotionally tax you, all that kind of stuff, but I just want to like, one, say thank you, and two, what do you think I could do? And so, and then there's another person who was like, who I met at a friend's birthday party, who I think lives in Virginia or like, I'm not really sure, a southern state. And they've also like, hey, what else can I do? Like, I've been signing and donating. And I was like, education, signing petitions, talking to your family and friends, calling out, these kind of things. And then also you sharing on social media, because then that influences your friend group and that influences their friend group. So I think in that sense, social media can be really helpful in expanding perspectives. How I can see social media being harmful, that's relevant to what's happening now, and then I'll go into like just harmful in general, is it can become performance based, and people can just post something and then feel off the hook, or like that's enough, like especially with the like first there was the first trend where it's like post on your story Black Lives Matter, tag 10 people. And I felt like that was more harmful than good, especially because it wasn't actually, yes, you're saying Black Lives Matter and that is raising awareness, but like, what else are you doing? Like, what else resources? Like, what are you doing? The action isn't there sometimes. And then there's a most recent trend where it's like post a Black tile on your Instagram, or like just a Black box on your Instagram, to show support for Black Lives Matter. And people, I mean, there's so many different perspectives on that. That I think lost from the real reason. People got into arguments, and that it was just a whole debate. So I think in that sense, it can be harmful. Also, some people could be sharing misinformation and harmful information. I know in DC, people were like, I think it was on Twitter, people were saying that there's like going to be a blackout, or like something was going to happen and people need to do this. And it was like, it was completely false. And like protesters were misinformed, and that's where protesters were mostly getting their information from at the time. And then like out of this context, I think self-esteem, which I think we haven't touched on, but I think it's there, like your self-esteem can really take a hit on social media, because people are not only judging you, but you could see a post from someone else and go to their comments and see what people think about someone else. So then you're kind of internalizing that as well, as to like what not to do, like what not to say, what not, like how to dress, how to eat, how to think, that kind of thing. So I think, and you're constantly comparing yourself. And I think if you're exposed to that too at such a young age, it can be really harmful. I think for me personally, I've like grown out of that mindset, because there is a different shift where it's like everyone's beautiful. Not everyone's beautiful, like everyone's beautiful. And like you're fine just the way you are, and like someone else's beauty doesn't take away from like your own beauty. Like you can acknowledge someone else having this and doing that, and you can also acknowledge you having this and doing that, or not having it and doing and not doing that, but like that's also okay. But yeah, I would say those like the main two things. Like your self-esteem really can take a hit with social media for sure. I think it's
I know when Instagram decided to stop using the hearts, the likes.
The likes,
on Instagram, and people literally
how do you show you like something?
It's like because for one, it was a validation that, oh, I'm doing something and I'm popular or whatever because of the likes, and also because like on YouTube, when you have people thumbs up, thumbs down, you have viewerships or etc. They use that type of stuff to make money, right? Because that's like say, hey, but look at my impressions, look at my likes, I get 100,000 likes per photo and all of that stuff. So I'm an influencer, blah, blah, blah. And so some of these people make a lot of money off of that. So beyond yes, absolutely. Definitely the image thing for sure. There's a lot of money tied into these likes and these posts and pictures that they put out there. There's a method to the madness, and that's where the mania, I think, comes in, because now it's this self-fulfilling drive to make more money and to do more outlandish things. I mean, there was one guy, was it Logan Paul or whatever? He went into this graveyard in Japan. It was like, and he was mind you, this guy is like one of the most popular people on YouTube. This guy is making millions a year, just doing these stupid posts. Him and his brother doing these stupid posts on YouTube. And he did these things, but see, it gets to the point where you'll do almost anything, and you'll see these posts because they want to go viral.
What did he do?
Huh?
He did something so awful.
Okay.
Yeah. He walked a traditional, so I believe it was like a garden that was traditionally used for like people to like
suicide, I think.
Yeah, to commit suicide. And so, and like that's what it's known for.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still allowed to like walk through the garden and be in the garden, stuff like that. But he was in the garden with his camera and like I think a friend or something, or maybe he was by himself. I didn't watch the video, so I don't really know. But he basically filmed or like showed the camera a person, like a dead body basically, and he was like, oh my gosh, and like laughing about it and making a joke about it. And it was just like,
it's very, very disrespectful. Very, very
extremely disrespectful.
Whatever you feel about suicide, whatever whatever you feel about any of that stuff.
Don't do that.
Plus, what he was doing was beyond disrespectful to the people, to the culture, etc. And I think he got kicked out of Japan, I think, if I remember correctly, or something like that. So, and his YouTube thing got banned for a while or whatever, because it was just the fact that you can go too far. And I think that is one of the toxic aspects of the cult of, social media, is the fact that you feed that narcissistic kind of part of yourself. And the more you get that reaction, the more you want to do to get that more reaction. So it's like a drug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of like, it is like a high. I think you get kind of consumed to see what do people say, because I think we all want ourselves, right? Our ideas, our style, or anything to be liked or validated and affirmed by other people. And I think that there's like a natural sense of that. And then I think things like social media can kind of take it out of whack. And then when you're formed in that, when like you start off so young where you're looking, okay, what did this get? What did that get? What did this person say? I think that's really, I think it's going to be a lot harder for people in that way, if they're formed in that and shaped in that, to course correct from that.
Yeah. And I'm also trying to really think about like some of these companies now, and specifically, like I think the latest thing was on TikTok, right? I already have a problem with TikTok anyway, but it's a company that's owned by a company out of Shanghai, right? I think it's called ByteDance. I think that's the name of the company, right? So I'm already leery about just giving my information out like that anyway, and just doing a bunch of stuff for that clout chase.
Also, will not get his DNA tested and sent to.
Yeah, I'm not doing that either.
Ancestry.
I'm telling people out there, watch the movie Gattaca. Do yourself a favor. You won't do it either.
All these movies that like I've never heard of.
It premiered at UVA when we were at school. It premiered at UVA, and I saw that movie, and it completely changed my life. I said, I will never do it. It wasn't even a thing then. And then it became a thing, and I said, that's Gattaca, and I'm not doing it. So anyway, but the point was that for a little while, that when people were uploading videos or whatever, they couldn't find anything that said like Black Lives Matter or George Floyd, right? And it was kind of blocked, right? And they fixed it. But because the backlash was like swift, like, yo, why can't I do this? Why can't I show my support this way? And they said it was a glitch, and they fixed it. They apologized, move on. It's all good. But in my mind's eye, I'm saying to myself, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd. Any combination of those words becomes problematic. That's what I'm saying. It didn't make sense to me that these specific 5 words specifically had that was setting off triggers for me in my mind's eye, in my conspiracy theorist mind's eye. That was actually a little premeditated, but at the same time, you know, I don't know that for a fact, and I'm never going to be able to prove it. And until they get somebody, I don't know, gets a subpoena to get the information, we're never going to know anyway. But the point was, it's just how these media companies really stifle information. You know, like Facebook, I know it's already been yelled at by everybody in terms of how they do things, right? They're very so pro this, but they're very silent on that, you know, and just how they're very selective in how they do, you know, their approaches, their campaigns. So I think, you know, there's a lot that I think people need to really think about in terms of some of these companies and their intentions, and ultimately some of the underlying laws that will be needed to be created to really kind of regulate some of this stuff, because I think there does need to be regulation. I think everybody's on the same page on that. I think now it's just a fight to figure out the details of what that regulation is, because the toxicity is immense.
Yeah. I think it's something like one of my beloved playwrights, August Wilson, said in Fences. He has this line: you got to take the crooked with the straights, you know? You got to take the cricket parts about, and Fences setting, he was talking about the system with the straight, right? With the path where you can move forward. You have to understand that there's these crooked paths that are really dangerous and dark and hard. And I think with social media, it's just like that. There are beautiful straight things that happen in pathways that are really good. And then there are these crooked spaces too. And I think it's about kind of having self-awareness at every stage, as you know, as you can, for self-awareness, parents over children, but young people, like when you have that sense of like, I have access and I have a freedom, like that sense of self-awareness and kind of self-policing. I think we have to be more self-policing and not leave it up to, you know, companies or government or whatever to do that, you know, policing for us. And I think that, you know, with the cricket and the straight, social media does allow us to see ourselves and the perceptions of how people see us, you know, and it helps to challenge sometimes, I think, in greater ways, faster, how these perceptions that we have about ourselves and these perceptions that we have about other people. And I think we've seen example of that in a huge way with this video of George Floyd that was, you know, recorded and then posted through social media platforms. And so the fire-like spread of information, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The ability to mobilize quickly.
The ability to mobilize. Also, you know, like, unfortunately, I've been irritated and frustrated hearing people say things like, I'm shocked this happened. I didn't know this was happening.
Yeah. How could you know?
Yeah, like, seriously, really?
But at the same time, like, okay, because this was filmed, right? And it was able to reach your cell phone, right? Or computer screen. I think that it has challenged people's perceptions of what they thought they knew, or like maybe what they believed to be true, or, you know, in all of these different ways. And so I think that is, that's an example of like social media in the straight, you know?
I think it was doing now is also challenging people's integrity, because it's kind of like what you're saying is like, stop with the whole "I didn't know this was happening" thing. No, you were just willfully ignorant of it. You decided that you saw it, and it's not happening to me or anybody I know or any, you know, race that I care about, so that whatever. So you could kind of go into that kumbaya sort of, you know, land, that colorblind land. And then, you know, now it's to the point where it's like, you can't do that anymore. You know, now you have to see that there are some aspects of true injustice out there that you really need to address, you need to tackle, and you need to actually look at it in yourself, because probably that part of the injustice you benefit from. And so there's that part where you start to challenge that integrity. I think to what you're saying, Shawnee. I think that's
yeah. Yeah, it can, or I think that depends on what your circles are looking like and who you're mixing with. Because like Linda started off saying, that in some instances, maybe in many instances, people's worlds, people's communities are not as mixed as you're describing your community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so therein lies a challenge. But I think that when you see something like that, or you're hearing something like that, I do think that it just, when you're able to like, oh my goodness, I've witnessed a real person die here. Not just like, it's not a TV show, the actor's not going to get up and like brush himself off and like, hey, go get, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that it does, it does have pause for thought. And I think that it's galvanized. It's what's helped to fill so many streets around the globe.
Yeah.
And it also has helped organize, like social media has helped organize activists on whatever side. It helps to, it's able to do that.
So we're gonna need to start wrapping up. So what I wanted to do was give Linda the last word. You're going to be the last word for us tonight.
We're going to give Linda the last word. And before that, Linda, I'm going to give a fun fact because I know you all don't know this. Fun social media fact. The Pew Research did a study on hashtags. Ooh. And hashtags, which, I don't even know how to use.
I don't like hashtags.
I don't even know what they are. How do you
like them?
Why are they important? However,
they
did a study on hashtags, and it showed that this was before the George Floyd murder, that Black Lives Matter, or hashtag Black Lives Matter, is used on an average of 17,000 times a day.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty, I was like, wow. Yeah. Boom. That was news. That was news. And I can't imagine now the number of times. But
can I say something about hashtags really quickly though?
Yes.
Last word.
Okay.
No, it's not her last word.
I don't know if I want this to be her last word. Right? But I saw this thing it's called virtual protesting, right? So let's say you post something raising awareness about Black Lives, how Black Lives Matter, and raising awareness and education and spreading resources, and just speaking out your opinions about it. And what you do is then in your hashtags you put all lives matter, or people on the complete opposite side. And that way, so that when people on the opposite side, or let's say people who are in all lives cabinet, then they do Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter, right?
And so it's actually showing up on people who don't think like
I
you.
Like
and that's
that.
The virtual.
So you're trying to actually break into the utopia.
Yeah, using the algorithm and the hashtag.
I like that. We're trying
That's actually funny. It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that, Linda, because actually there are a lot of K-pop bands have been using the hashtag White Lives Matter as a way to counter protest against racists. So when you go in and you hashtag White Lives Matter right now, you're going to see a bunch of K-pop bands and videos and clips and scenes and stuff like that, and a lot of memes around that to kind of challenge these institutional, racist kind of thought processes, and be in a weird way this global anti-racism type of movement. It's really interesting. It's really cool. It's funny.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I'm like, whoa, did not know about that.
That is very
I never thought about that.
I have never thought about it either, and I get the concept. Because really, if you're just talking to, if there is no protest, if you're just talking to people who are in agreement and for what you're talking about, you bring your thoughts and you bring all of that to the other side. You know, so I like that. Okay. Linda, last word. That was a brilliant word, but now you got to give us something else.
You got to think something else.
All right, last words in terms of what?
In terms of anything. In terms
of media, some good, some
takeaways,
positive.
Whatever. Here's one thing I did vote actually this week, and first time voter. So
Yay!
Policy plus protest equals actual change. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
2, social media. I think with this conversation, it's really like, 1, you have to be proactive in what you're doing in social media and what you're seeing and what you want to see. Like, you can't just leave it up to like what you guys said, like the companies and all that kind of stuff. And it's up to like, it's really the person who's using social media that makes it toxic or not.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Great.
That's
great.
I'm
That's
the youngest,
great.
so I'm not used to
No,
saying
this is
last
good.
words.
You are leading us. The youngest leading us.
That's
so this
right.
Is good. I love that.
That's
Policy
right.
plus protest equals actual
That's
change.
right. Well, thank you all for listening to the Space in Between podcast. Again, a safe space for diverse voices. You can find us on Twitter at inbetween_space or on Instagram at the_space, the_space_in between_podcast. All right. So, and check us out on YouTube, and we're going to upload this video, obviously. And until next time, find us on iTunes or your favorite app. And peace.